A man, Dan Chase, lives alone with his 2 dogs. He lives an isolated life, and it seems like he is hiding from something. One day, while leaving a doctor's appointment, he notices a bald man sitting in a coffee shop. Back at home, he prepares for potential danger, setting up a makeshift alarm system with cans strung on a rope.
I understand why you felt like you needed to protect me from it.
That night, with his gun and a flashlight by his side, Dan is abruptly awakened by the sound of the cans. His dogs alert him to something downstairs. In the shadows, he confronts the same man from the coffee shop. The dogs subdue him, and Dan shoots him to make the situation look like a struggle, firing 2 shots into the ceiling. Dan quickly leaves town and calls Emily to warn her. Meanwhile, FBI Assistant Director Harold, while spending time with his grandson, is informed by Agent Raymond Waters that an old case from 1987 involving a missing subject has resurfaced. The subject is Dan Chase.
In July 1987, a man under you went MIA near Torjat.
That file has been resolved. It's been sealed for 3 decades.
As Dan tries to escape the threat of being caught, he stops at a diner and makes a call to prepare a safe place.
Email me if you have any questions.
Understood.
Harold already knew Dan was alive, even before Waters called. Harold warns Dan about a transponder placed on his car to track him. He also told him to not be tied with Emily.
You and I both get to spend whatever years we have left on this earth pretending we never knew each other.
Dan calls Emily. He then manages to lose the tail by discarding the transponder. When the agents sweep the area, Dan emerges from hiding, crashes his car into theirs, and kills 1 agent. However, the other agent manages to subdue him. As Dan is captured, his dogs are left behind. He then crashes the car again, and with the help of his dogs, manages to escape. Dan then calls Harold, warning that any further attempts on his life or Emily's will be met with deadly force.
Anyone you send at my kid, I'm sending back in pieces.
Harold stands in a desert waiting for Dan, who arrives riding on a horse. Harold calls him Johnny, but Dan insists on discussing their business, providing guns for Afghan revolutionaries fighting for Hamzad.
So, we gonna argue now before you eventually agree to give me what I need?
Johnny, do you have any idea how dangerous it is for me to even be here?
Hamzad was feared in Afghanistan for his ruthless tactics, and Dan has been Hamzad's right-hand man. Dan is firm in his commitment, while Harold warns him that if this deal gets exposed, he'll be forced to take action against him on behalf of the government.
And he's making the guys who are going to win it weaker for having to fend him off.
None of that matters. This is where the decisions get made, okay? It's just you and me.
In the present, Harold examines the scene where Dan left the bodies. Dan ditches his old car and heads to Colliersville, Pennsylvania, where he meets Zoe, a widow, and his new next-door neighbor.
Can I help you?
Hi. I'm just making sure you have everything you need.
She demands that he empty his apartment, as she has a strict no pets policy. Dan, using the name Peter Caldwell, complies.
I'm sorry. It was nice meeting you.
Harold went to meet Morgan Boat, a former mentor to both Dan and Harold. He had warned them about getting involved with Hamzad.
He's using it for all it's worth, and it's working. Is that it took so damn long for any of this to catch up to you?
I spoke to him.
Meanwhile, Dan tries to mend things with Zoe by cooking breakfast for her. They discuss their past partners, with Zoe reflecting on the failures of her marriage. Finally, she decides to let him stay.
And you'll cook 3 nights a week. Groceries are on your dime. If you can live with that, I can live with this.
Deal.
Back in his house, Zoe comes to Dan and asks him out for dinner. They went out and had dinner while conversing.
How long has it been since she passed away?
Oh, a little over 5 years. How long has it been since your divorce?
About the same as you. 5 years.
As they're going back, Dan is forced to change his appearance after encountering a police roadblock.
Hello.
Where are you folks headed tonight?
Home.
Would you mind showing us your identification as well, sir?
He wasn't driving.
It won't take long.
We left in a hurry. I didn't
Officer,
bring
my husband and I have lived in this area for a long time.
The unsuspecting officers let the pass, and Dan managed to escape. The next morning, Dan decides to leave. But before he goes, he offers to pay for Zoe's son's tuition, which she declines.
And that I was so sorry that he had been embarrassed like that, but what I didn't tell him, So my son will spend the afternoon in his professor's office trying to reschedule the test and...
Meanwhile, Harold contacts Julian, a mysterious figure from Boat's note, to help track Dan down.
Easy any of this sounds, it will not be easy. So the damage he'll do or the things he'll destroy.
If you're asking me to help you locate him, it would be helpful to be pointed in the right direction.
Julian Carson, a serial killer, helps a woman on crutches at the bus stop before receiving a call from Harold.
Look, yeah, hold on, please. I'll catch the next one.
Thanks.
In a flashback, Dan is trying to gain Hamzad's trust. Despite winning Hamzad over by offering his help in the war against the Soviets, Hamzad tests Dan further by introducing his wife, Abby Chase.
If you want to join us here, you will have to persuade her too.
Meanwhile, back at Zoe's, Dan tries to explain his side of the story, but the more he speaks, the less convinced she becomes. Trying to convince her, he made her talk to Emily. Emily tried to soften Zoe's heart. Emily turned out to be Angela, an agent that works closely with Harold. She is helping her father by being undercover there. Eventually, Zoe tells him to leave or she'll call the police.
Don't be here when I get back.
Outside, Zoe senses danger when she hears the dogs barking. Then, through the window, she sees Dan fighting with Julian. But as Dan struggles with Julian, Zoe unleashes his dogs, who once again come to his rescue, pinning Julian down while Dan shoots him. Outside, he prepares to shoot the CIA drone surveilling him. In the flashbacks, Dan tried to convince Abby of his motivations. She represents skepticism towards the U.S. in war-torn nations, shaped by their history of supplying weapons and supporting various factions.
Then maybe you can even cause a little chaos in their ranks, but you cannot solve our problems that way.
After losing their drone, the CIA agents gather to talk. Tensions rise as the agents clash, with Harold and Angela viewing Waters as a stooge of Hamzad.
So? Why would anyone from Langley choose you?
Harold then reveals the true reason behind Hamzad's revenge spree. Dan took Hamzad's wife from him.
So she left her warlord husband and followed the American back home.
Zoe has been taken hostage by Dan. He drove to a remote place where he had a flashback of Abby.
Until I know which kind you are, I will assume the worst and protect my husband from it.
Zoe emerges from the trunk of Dan's car. Shaking, she stands a few feet away while Dan calmly instructs her to call her son Jason and reassure him that she is okay, and to let him know when the FBI shows up at his house.
The FBI is going to knock on his door. They're going to ask him some questions.
Meanwhile, Angela, who is revealed to be Emily, is spending time with Harold's grandson. Later, Emily calls her father, learning that he's currently in Colorado but plans to move to Los Angeles.
Yeah, well, there are people out there who've got grudges against him as well.
Dan has an investment company there, Corsair Finance, but his real purpose in LA is to draw attention to Hamzad, hoping to attract someone with a grudge against him and let them deal with the fallout.
Stick with me, Emily. We'll get through this.
I know.
Dan adopts the alias Henry Dixon, and Zoe becomes Marcia Dixon. Stewart arranges an apartment for them.
I'm not going to be here for that long, but appreciate it.
A flashback reveals why Abby chose Dan over Hamzad. During an act of retaliation against the Russians, Dan's choice to show restraint instead of vengeance proves to Abby that he is different from Hamzad. Julian reappears now in his front-end job disguise. He discusses the incident with his partner and encourages Julian to contact Harold. Over the phone, Julian suggests there may be a mole in Harold's team.
Ready to depart alert. Did he know I was coming? Or someone on your end tipped him off that something was coming? Do you have any idea who your mole might be?
Later, Harold, Angela, and Waters meet Nina, Hamzad's confidant and lawyer. Harold subtly reveals secrets about Dan's past.
Her name was Balur Dodfar. That was her name before they were married. But who back then went by the name of Johnny Kohler.
After this, Nina arranges another meeting to discuss the next steps. Dan meets a Zachary to talk about his business. He also mentions that he wants to move that exact day. Zachary hesitates, but Dan doesn't want advice. He has already decided.
I want you to start putting the wheels in motion, Zach.
Later, Nina sat with Harold, Angela, and Waters once again. She offers a meeting between Harold and Hamzad, but Harold is supposed to fly to Hamzad.
Mr. Hamzad will consider this conversation ongoing.
Following this, Harold gets on a plane along with Angela. Back at the house, Zoe prepares dinner. After they sat, Zoe gave him a divorce paper.
So, it would make it almost impossible for you to accomplish anything.
She gave him 2 options. She will either stay or help him, or she will divorce him. For her to stay, he must transfer half of everything he owns.
What it always is a measure of discomfort. I want to amount to more than just a complication in your story.
Angela and Harold confront each other on a plane, acknowledging the truth that Angela is the mole and Dan's daughter. Harold feels betrayed, telling her she no longer feels like family.
Jesus, I don't even know what to call you.
You think I'm someone different now than I was 5 minutes ago?
I think you've been...
Angela, conflicted, tries to reassure him, but both she and Harold remain unsure about what the other will do moving forward.
You're going to have to make a choice about which one of you emerges.
In the flashback set in Afghanistan, an older Abby discusses Zoe with Dan, noting that she isn't like her, but still has a choice. Cut to the present, where Dan is unmoved by Zoe's demands. He quietly accepts her conditions.
That's the martial login info. Check the balance.
Dan reveals that Emily is in danger, and he must leave for Morocco to ensure her safety. Zoe agrees to go with him.
Come with me, please.
The flashback reveals Abby's fears about the power vacuum that would emerge after the Soviets leave. She warns Dan about Pavlovich, whom they had been trying to break, and reveals she had been spying for Hamzad. Abby also keeps information from Hamzad about a mineral deposit of immense value. This knowledge is why Hamzad continues to pursue Dan.
Buried beneath the deep veins of lithium, uranium, the Russians need it.
In the plane, Angela challenges Harold for revealing personal details about her mother. Harold asks her which identity she will choose.
That I mattered to you. In any way. Because if I did, you would understand how confusing this is for me.
Dan makes a painful decision to leave his loyal dogs, Dave and Carol, at a pet care facility. He subtly suggests to Zoe that she may need to take care of them. Meanwhile, Waters receives a call from Morgan Boat, who instructs him to follow his orders without question.
I'm putting together a small team. I'd like you to be a part of it.
Boat then meets Julian. He asks about the bullet that hit him and apologizes. When Julian asks about the mole, Boat reveals that he put the mole there himself. He also refers to Dan as his son and asks Julian to hurt his sons.
I'm gonna ask you to do the one thing a good father must never ever do. I'm gonna ask you to hurt my sons.
Dan and Zoe stop at Zachary's house, where Zoe successfully convinces him to help. Harold and Angela land in North Africa, where Hamzad gives Harold the task of finding the manifest for the plane Dan and Abby used to escape in 1987.
You want to find something in here, you have to be here to find it. The flight that your parents took.
Shortly after, Nina, Hamzad's lawyer, reveals it isn't enough, and the full destruction of Harold's life is imminent.
The memorandum detailing your guilt will be distributed before end of day.
What?
Angela, unwilling to give up, suggests killing Hamzad and spinning a narrative to absolve Harold.
That is the story that we will tell after Faraz Hamzad is dead.
Back on the road, Zoe tells Dan that he feels like he's not a person but just a machine built to protect things. She challenges that perception, seeing him for the human being he is, with sensitive and caring parts. Zoe reminds him that he is not just defined by his work, but by what remains after it all.
I may not be the partner that you would have thought you wanted, but maybe I'm the partner that you need.
On the flight to Morocco, Dan offers Zoe a piece of advice. Leave her name and identity somewhere she can retrieve them later, just in case. Zoe, however, disagrees, believing that once you're in, there's no going back.
I see. That's the price you pay for your line of work.
Meanwhile, back at the bureau, Cheryl delivers bad news to Harold. Rumors are circulating that he helped harbor a fugitive, fueling the suspicion that he assisted in Emily's escape.
Not in any form that we recognized after. And it was all I could do not to lose it.
What'd you say to him?
Morgan Boat is present at Harold's house, and Cheryl hands him the phone. Boat explains how Emily became involved in his operation, but his proposition to abandon her does not sit well with Harold, who demands that Boat drop the plan.
This can all be laid at her feet, and you can be free of it.
In Morocco, Waters, Julian, and his partner Mark await their mission from Butt. Meanwhile, Dan and Zoe plan to attend Pavlovich's event on an island, where they hope to convince him to side with them against Hamzad. While en route, Dan shares how he communicates with Emily through their joint bank account, where the current balance signals that she is on her way to join him.
That means she's on her way to my location.
In a flashback, Dan frees Pavlovich to protect Abby. At the event, Dan seats Zoe at the bar while he conducts business with Pavlovich. Back at the airport, Emily and Harold encounter a DGST agent, who Emily called to escort Harold for his safety. Harold then confides in Emily about Boat's plan, which involves sacrificing Emily's identity to protect Harold's legacy. Emily is willing to make that sacrifice.
I have to go figure that out. No matter where it takes me.
Zoe is approached by Nina at the bar. Meanwhile, back at their meeting, Pavlovich remembers Dan. He recalls their brief meeting and admits that Dan's favor is the one debt he truly values.
Who once saved my life, of all the debts I've owed in my life.
But Pavlovich's tone shifts, and he confirms that Hamzad has already manipulated him into betraying Dan, offering Pavlovich a favor in exchange for delivering Dan to him. Despite being outnumbered, Dan manages to escape, deciding not to kill Pavlovich a second time.
That's twice.
After leaving, Dan and Zoe find themselves cornered by Harold, who delivers the heart-wrenching news. The old man has Emily. Boat had kidnapped Emily.
She was with you. Where is she now?
She's been taken.
Taken by who?
The old man.
We're gonna go get her back.
Emily, sedated, is still under the control of those who hold her, while Waters, Julian, and Marty are holed up in a secluded basement. Waters receives a call from Harold, who tries to learn their location.
So let's talk about our expectations in the next few hours.
Meanwhile, Zoe mentions Nina and how Zoe noticed a strange grimace on Nina's face when she mentioned her own safety.
She kind of made a face.
Zoe believes this indicates a hint of distrust between Hamzad and Nina, though Dan dismisses it, insisting Hamzad does not tolerate disloyalty in his associates.
For us, Hamzad is not a guy who tolerates disloyal people.
Harold approaches Dan with an offer. Either submit to being taken by plane to Hamzad, or Boat will deliver Emily instead.
If you're not, he delivers her to Hamzad instead.
Dan agrees to go himself to free his daughter, surprising Zoe. He bids Zoe goodbye, urging her to live a normal life in his absence.
Guess I'll never know what it's indicating, will I?
In a flashback, Hamzad confronts Abby and Dan over their actions in freeing Pavlovich. Abby reveals she has been working with the Russians, feeding them intel to strengthen Hamzad's side. Despite this, Hamzad is enraged when she refuses to disclose the location of the mine she discovered in Panjshir. Abby argues that the mine's power could corrupt anyone who seeks it, and she refuses to let Hamzad control it. Hamzad gives Dan until sunrise to leave and Abby the night to reconsider. Back in the present, Marty notices men closing in on both sides of the road, suspecting they are Hamzad's forces.
I think it's 2 groups, a dozen or 2 dozen men total. They're moving in position now, because it would take that many men to cut off the street from both directions, which is what I would do.
Meanwhile, Dan and Harold, along with the Moroccan secret police, proceed with the transaction involving Hamzad. Harold asks Dan about the flight Hamzad asked him about.
What am I still not getting here? Are you for real right now? Hey, Mike. Sometimes there are things that you don't get to know.
Harold shares a story about Emily from her academy days, reflecting on a time when she punched an instructor who called her freckles too many times. He compares the moment he discovered her with the moment his own son was born.
But in the last few days, that moment has been haunting me, raising questions. Fiction of a person was so important to me.
She didn't, and it wasn't.
Dan begins to voice his fears about Abby. He recalls how Abby cultivated him as an asset in Afghanistan, and now he wonders if she did the same to him, using him to extract herself from a dangerous situation once the truth came out.
That's a hell of a thing. That everything she did, everything we did was for her.
Just then, Waters phones Harold with an update on the situation. The group follows Waters' lead.
It's Harper. Hamzad's reneged. The deal's off. Follow me.
As the team attempts to get Emily out of her location, Julian takes matters into his own hands, single-handedly killing Hamzad's men to clear the way for Waters and Marty to escape with Emily. However, their attempt is thwarted by a woman in Hamzad's camp who kills both Waters and Marty.
Come on! Whoa, back up, back up, back up!
The Moroccan secret police urge Harold to turn around and leave, but Dan and Harold decide to continue on their path. They fight off the cars blocking their way and head toward their destination.
Wherever this leads, we're in this together now.
When they reach the destination, they discover that the van is empty, and both Waters and Marty are dead. Dan reveals the truth about the manifest that Hamzad had asked him about. The flight that Dan and Abby took in 1987 carried Hamzad's daughter, who was with them when they fled to America. Dan's decision not to kill Hamzad that day was motivated by the presence of Hamzad's daughter, who was in the same room.
But in that moment, I couldn't do it.
Elsewhere, the woman who killed Marty and Waters tells Hamzad that Parwana is back, and Emily emerges, covered in a scarf, revealing her true identity. Emily is Hamzad's daughter. Dan and Harold are deep in Afghanistan, sneaking through the country in a truck. Suddenly, their truck is ambushed. Amid the chaos, their driver is killed, and 2 attackers are eliminated by Dan.
Wait a minute. Wait, no!
So that's a problem. Returning to the problem at hand. The fact that we have no idea where we're going.
With their plan now compromised, Dan orders Harold to call their contact, but Harold refuses and uses Ahmed's phone to find their next destination.
Stop assuming that you know what I'm thinking, and stop telling me what else I should be thinking instead. It's safe to assume that that's where we were supposed to meet our contact from the resistance.
Despite the setback, Dan knows the area and drives them to the next location, where they're supposed to meet a contact who opposes Hamzad. However, when they arrive, they find a group of armed men who believe they are enemies. Just as one man prepares to kill Harold, another man, Omar, intervenes and saves them.
We were ambushed on the road. He's dead.
Soldiers for hire.
The woman was kidnapped by Faraz Hamzad.
And we must be careful. The Taliban has spies everywhere. Come.
Omar takes them to a high vantage point to show them Hamzad's mining operation, which has grown significantly in power over the years.
He hated those guys almost as much as he hated the Russians during the war.
How much money must be in the ground that no one will even talk about how much money is in the ground?
Hamzad has allied with the local governor and the Taliban, making him a formidable figure, with spies everywhere. Hamzad controls the mine and has positioned himself as a key middleman between the American government and the Taliban.
Why doesn't the Taliban just come in and take it for themselves?
Because your government has sanctioned them all.
Your friends are afraid to cross him.
I just want to make sure you aren't before we go any farther.
When Harold and Dan arrive at their contact's location, they find everyone dead. Harold tries calling Marianne. She mentions Ali, the commander's right-hand man, leaving Harold confused about Omar's true identity.
Who's Ali?
Commander Abdul Nazari's man, Ali.
Omar becomes increasingly interested in why Angela is so important, enough for people to risk their lives for her. A fight breaks out, with Omar demanding answers. Dan is stabbed during the altercation but manages to leave a scar on Omar's face before escaping with Harold. The 2 men are pursued by Omar's men on dirt bikes but manage to lose them.
Come on. Get him. So what did we just walk into back there?
Taliban intelligence.
Dan leads Harold to an old cave he used to use where he hides supplies for situations like this. Later, Harold calls his wife, who expresses concern about his safety and their escalating situation back home.
And she wanted to leave you a number that you could call day or night if you needed her. Are we gonna see you again?
Meanwhile, Dan is tormented by a nightmare about Hamzad. When he wakes up, he sees a figure. It's Hamzad. Emily is brought into Hamzad's camp. Khadija, an older woman in the camp, takes Emily to a room and asks her what she knows. Emily reveals she's an FBI agent and that Hamzad kidnapped her. Khadija reveals Hamzad is her father. She tells Emily that Abby, also known as Balur, and Dan kidnapped her when she was young, and her real name is Parwana.
You will wear this. It will help when he sees you. Your father is Faraz Hamzad.
I mean, he must want to see me.
No.
Two women enter with an old video camera, setting it up in the room. When Emily turns on the camera, she is shocked to see a video of a young Hamzad playing with her, singing, and interacting with her as a child. The next day, Khadija brings Emily to Hamzad, allowing them to talk. Hamzad claims that Emily made the choice to be there when she boarded the plane with Harold.
I wanted to know where I came from.
This is where you came from.
I want to know about my mother.
What did they tell you?
That you were dangerous to my mother.
Hamzad paints Balur as a cold, betraying woman, quick to abandon others, but Emily refuses to believe this.
There must have been hope in her and love in her. I have come so far from where I started.
Meanwhile, Omar arrives at the camp offering his services to Hamzad. Omar, a man from Kabul's ministries, has heard about Hamzad's problem with an American agent and wants to take Emily off his hands. He threatens Hamzad by bringing up a lithium deposit near Meshbahar, a valuable resource that Hamzad is not exploiting due to missing tribute payments. Omar pressures Hamzad, implying that without the payments, Hamzad risks losing protection from his allies. Hamzad remains unshaken, offering to report Omar to his uncle. Hamzad confronts Emily, accusing her of being like her mother. Hamzad tries to choke Emily, but he stops himself. Khadija then takes Emily to meet her cousin, Firuza, who tends to Emily's wounds. As the days pass, Emily continues to ask Khadija about her mother, but Khadija refuses to answer, telling Emily she's not asking the right questions.
Yeah, you're goddamn right, I'm angry.
Everyone is angry. When you are ready to ask different questions, you will know where to find me.
Emily starts settling into life in the camp and grows closer to Firuza's son, Farouk. Farouk offers to teach her the local language. Meanwhile, Omar meets with a man named Pashto and reports Hamzad's actions. It's been 3 weeks since Emily's attack and his encounter with Dan. Omar tells Pashto that Hamzad is in trouble and needs to be pressured further. Pashto agrees and orders Omar to visit Hamzad again to escalate the situation. Khadija, still anxious, makes a call asking about the mining operations. She learns that the operations have been stopped, and the violation of assurances has put them in an even worse position.
They have put us in an impossible situation.
The next day, Omar arrives at Hamzad's camp with armed men. Omar threatens to conscript every boy in the camp, demanding that Hamzad face him in front of them. Fortunately, Hamzad and Emily are already on their way out of the camp. Hamzad hopes to hide Emily in a cave until he can safely send her away. Hamzad opens up to Emily. He explains that Balur taught him a valuable lesson about love and trust, but ultimately, he believes that one can't have both.
Decides it wants to be learned.
As they approach the cave, they hear movement and quickly draw their guns. Hamzad heads inside first, with Emily securing the perimeter. A gunshot rings out, and Emily rushes toward the cave to check what happened. Harold is the one who shot Hamzad. In an emotional moment, she hugs Dan, asking why they came.
How'd you even get here?
Marion, it's time to go home now.
Despite the obvious answer, Emily insists she won't leave Hamzad to die. Harold, trying to keep things moving, insists that a chopper is just a phone call away and that they need to escape.
I told you to look after Cheryl and Henry, and not me.
Emily's main concern is not just Hamzad's fate, but the people in the camp. She begs Dan and Harold to help her, even as Hamzad tells her to leave.
You have to go.
No, not like this. Not with you like this. The family, everyone there, they're in danger. They need him. You going to help me?
Yes.
After much back and forth, Emily admits that her arrival in the camp has endangered everyone. Dan, understanding the gravity of the situation, agrees to help and warns Harold not to push Emily too far.
We're taking him home.
You were so sure she was dead. Was it because the alternative is even scarier?
Meanwhile, tensions rise back at the camp between Khadijah and Omar. Omar is convinced that Emily is in the camp, and Khadijah tries to warn him to leave peacefully, but Omar refuses, growing more aggressive. Tariq, Khadijah's son, arrives by helicopter with money to offer Omar in exchange for him backing off.
They used you to send the message to us. Anything more you do from here, you will answer for.
After seeing the money and hearing Tariq's warning, Omar starts to leave, but Tariq is worried about what comes next. He informs Khadijah that their accounts have been frozen by a man named Boat.
We have bigger problems than that right now.
What could be bigger problems than this?
Have you ever heard of the man named Morgan Boat? He is the one who was behind the deal to deliver Dan Chase. He's frozen all our assets and means to see us ruined over it.
On his way out, Omar encounters a frightened Farouk and asks about the mysterious woman. Farouk nods, confirming Emily's presence in the camp. Farouza rushes out to protect Farouk, but is shot and killed right in front of her son. A violent gunfight ensues. As Hamzad and the others make their way back to the camp, Hamzad is in critical condition, bleeding heavily. During the ride, Dan asks what Hamzad said to Emily, but Hamzad refuses to answer. Emily, processing everything happening around her, begs Dan to give her some space to process.
But getting him home, that's important to me. I know what I'm doing.
Of course you do. I want you to stay behind me anyway.
As they encounter Omar's men and take them out, Omar calls and demands that Hamzad return to the camp with the American woman. Emily, determined to help, offers to go with Hamzad and even threatens to reveal her true identity to save him and the people in the camp.
So I can defuse all of this.
How on earth would you do that?
With the truth.
Back at the camp, Omar and his men wait for Hamzad's arrival. When Hamzad shows up, Omar mocks him, eager to learn the identity of the mysterious woman. Meanwhile, Emily sneaks away from Harold and Dan, heading straight for the camp.
Change of plans. We need to redirect. Now.
The helicopter can't land near the camp to avoid international issues, so Emily decides to confront Omar directly. She approaches him, reveals her identity as Parwana Hamzad, and stabs him in the neck. A gunfight erupts, with Dan covering Emily's back from a distance. Despite their efforts, Omar and his men are too strong. Just in time, the American chopper arrives with reinforcements. Emily walks toward Omar, who is crawling on the ground. Without hesitation, she shoots him in the back of his head. A doctor comes for Hamzad. The doctor signals to Khadijah that Hamzad won't survive much longer. Meanwhile, Tariq, Khadijah's son, tries but fails to get through to the minister. Hamzad, on his deathbed, asks for Emily. Tariq informs them that they have roughly 72 hours to leave the camp. Harold and Dan are waiting for Emily to return. Harold pleads with their pilot to be patient, while Dan is convinced that Emily will come through for them.
She knows they won't wait long. She'll be here.
When she finally arrives with Farouk in tow, Emily asks Dan and Harold to go back and convince Boat to unfreeze Hamzad's assets. Dan and Harold agree.
And I love you. Please, hurry.
Meanwhile, in the camp, Hamzad speaks to Emily and finally accepts her as his daughter, though he insists she can't stay.
Please, don't tell me that I don't belong here.
You belong.
Back in America, Harold and Dan arrive at Boat's house, where Harold continues to ignore Marianne's calls. They're not greeted warmly, and Harold updates Boat on the situation. Boat is shocked to learn that Emily is Hamzad's daughter and refuses to reconsider his position, warning Harold and Dan that they have no idea what they're getting into.
We came to ask you to reconsider.
No. And the thought hasn't even once crossed your minds. Jesus.
What did you mean when you said we don't know what story we're in?
Suddenly, Dan's dogs make an unexpected appearance, and behind them, Zoe. Back in the camp, Khadija announces that Hamzad has passed away. In America, Zoe explained she had tried to return to her life but struggled to move on. She reached out to Hamzad's lawyer but got no response, only to receive a call from Boat, who invited her into his home. Dan is furious and surprised that Boat got Zoe involved.
She did.
Why were you watching Hamzad's lawyer?
He's concerned that Hamzad has been working with the Russians to exploit the mineral deposits in Afghanistan. Dan insists it's impossible for Hamzad to be working with Suleiman Pavlovich.
And if he were, it definitely wouldn't be that Russian.
Just then, Zoe receives a call from Hamzad's lawyer, asking to meet her next week. Dan confronts Boat, pressing him about the situation and the truth about Emily's identity. Suddenly, two assassins break into the house. Boat kills one of them, but is ultimately killed by the second assassin. Dan arrives in time to save Zoe. Meanwhile, Suleiman Pavlovich receives photographic proof of Boat's death.
А что с теми двумя? Моя группа пока не вернулась. Я все еще пытаюсь с ними связаться.
Emily pays tribute to her father, Hamzad, at his burial. She writes a letter, acknowledging that although she didn't know him for long, she is grateful for the brief time they shared.
And know if it is something to fear, something to fight, or something more rare. To know that thing in the dark is something to hold on to.
After the burial, Emily and Khadija see Farouk and Tarek off. Back in America, Harold returns home to find his wife, Cheryl, dealing with a plumbing issue. He tells her Emily is in danger. He asks Cheryl to grab a bag for herself and their son, Henry. Cheryl reveals that Henry no longer lives there, and before she can explain, Dan and Zoe enter the house.
And we need to go. I don't want that car sitting in the driveway any longer than it has to.
As Dan settles in and tries to contact Emily, he and Zoe discuss the urgency of their situation. They need to leave soon, especially with Boat's body likely to be discovered in the morning. Dan is also concerned about Pavlovich's intentions and the potential attack on Boat's life on American soil.
There's something going on here we don't understand yet.
Meanwhile, in the basement, Harold and Cheryl argue about Henry living with Kurt and Louise. Cheryl, struggling with the uncertainty surrounding Emily, pushes Harold for answers about Emily's real identity. For the first time, Harold reveals the truth to Cheryl.
Angela Adams is a fiction. If you want me to stop, tell me right now.
Finally, Dan is able to reach Emily. He urges him to leave Afghanistan, but Emily reveals it's too late. The army is already closing in on them.
So we're moving. Don't hang up,
I won't. You just give me a minute.
As the enemies breach the camp, Emily screams for them to stop, and then everything goes silent. Everyone assumes Emily is dead.
Shit! No, wait!
Dan demands that Harold help him extract the truth from one of the assassins they've captured. Harold asks Zoe to distract his wife, while Dan tortures the assassin for information. Dan is convinced that the men who attacked Emily were Russians.
What did you mean, did you hear it too?
They were speaking Russian.
Morgan Boat. Did he ever mention Pavlovich?
Meanwhile, Cheryl, still reeling from Emily's last words, asks Zoe if she knows more about Harold's secret life. Zoe admits that she's in a transitional phase, unsure of where she stands in all of this. Zoe eventually tells her the truth about Boat's death and how it might be tied to Emily's fate.
The men that killed Emily were his men.
Back in the basement, as Dan tortures the assassin, Harold reflects on the loss of Emily and his regrets. He sees the ghost of his son and regrets not being able to say goodbye. Harold is grappling with his past decisions and the impact of his work on his family. He asks Zoe about Boat's last moments, and Zoe reveals that Boat was sending a message to someone. Harold believes he now knows who Boat was texting.
Something important to this puzzle that he needed to get into the hands of someone he trusted.
Dan finally gets the information he needs from the assassin. The assassin reveals that Zoe, Harold, and Dan were also targets, though he doesn't know why. They speculate that Hamzad's lawyer might know more about why they were targeted. Zoe decides it's time to go to London and figure everything out. Harold, after a tearful goodbye with Cheryl, promises to work on their family issues once he returns. He sends Cheryl to a hotel for safety, believing they'll figure it out in the end. Harold walks toward the basement after Cheryl leaves, probably to kill the assassin. Julian tries to move on from his past, quitting his job and casually dating a woman he met at a bus stop. However, his old life creeps back in when Harold shows up uninvited at his house.
I think Morgan Boat sent you an email just before he was murdered.
After some back and forth, Harold asks Julian to consider helping him by showing him the last email Boat sent to him.
I need you to show me what it said.
Meanwhile, Dan and Zoe check into a hotel across from Nina's secretary's house, where Dan has set up a plan to watch her from a distance. Zoe, unaware of Dan's full intentions, later learns that this was part of Dan's strategy to keep an eye on Nina. Dan, still grieving over Emily's death, struggles with his anger, but recognizes that he must find a way to manage it better. With only 24 hours left before they meet with Nina, the two talk about Boat. Zoe shares the brief conversation she had with Boat, and despite their differences, Dan admits that Boat was a great teacher. Zoe, feeling conflicted about her role in the case, opens up about her sense of guilt and how she feels like someone who breaks things.
But I know I'm someone who breaks things, remember?
Julian refuses to help Harold. The two men start arguing. Harold presses further, trying to convince Julian. Finally, Harold left his number for Julian to contact him if he changes his mind.
And you're on your own.
The next day, Zoe and Dan wait for Nina at a restaurant, but Nina doesn't show up. Dan calls Anna, Nina's secretary, but she is evasive about Nina's whereabouts.
Sorry, she's out of the office attending to a personal matter and won't be checking messages, but...
Dan decides to visit Anna and subtly threatens her, knowing she would contact Nina and lead them to her. Zoe is taken aback by how Dan had orchestrated the entire plan without her knowing and feels guilty for how easily they manipulated and hurt Anna.
I understand it's not a laser rifle,
Once Anna contacts Nina, Dan traces her location, and the two head to Nina's hideout. On the drive there, Dan tries to comfort Zoe, understanding that she's conflicted about their actions. He reassures her that she's not a monster and that he gets what she's going through.
You don't want to say because you can't imagine anyone else understanding about what sort of person you are.
I don't want to have to live outside with the animals.
Upon reaching the house, Dan asks Zoe to wait outside while he checks the premises. Inside, Dan discovers Nina immobilized and a masked intruder ransacking the house. A fight ensues, and Dan kills the intruder, escorting Nina outside but warning Zoe to stay back due to the poison in the air. Nina, as she dies, tells Dan where to find a USB drive, which contains vital information. Dan and Zoe watch the video on the USB and uncover the reasons behind Pavlovich's actions. The video reveals that Nina, in a desperate attempt to gain protection after Boat's death, had planned to use the information to bargain with Pavlovich. It turns out that Pavlovich discovered multiple mine deposits around the world, most of which are in regions that are not friendly to America.
I have learned that a number of those parties are engaged in a secret plan.
The plan is to control access to these rare metals, which could give Pavlovich and his cartel powerful leverage in the global market. However, the cartels are uncertain about trusting Pavlovich, which is why they put a hit on both Zoe and Dan.
The cartel have begun to doubt his trustworthiness because of this.
After viewing the video, Dan realizes that the only way to get the antidote in time is to allow himself to be captured by Pavlovich's men. He insists that Zoe must leave him behind, despite her protests. She fears he will be killed, but is left with no other choice but to trust him. Dan reassures her that he will return, urging her to have faith.
I don't believe you.
I need you to.
Elsewhere, Harold meets with Julian, trying to convince him to seek revenge for Boat's death. Julian refuses to re-enter the game, but he does show Harold the last email Boat sent him, a picture of Pavlovich with several other people, including Harold's ex-wife. This revelation shakes Harold to his core as he realizes that he trusted the wrong person all along.
And that is my ex-wife.
Dan gets taken by Pavlovich's men outside of Nina's hideout. Dan, captured by Pavlovich's men, is slowly coming to terms with his situation. As he struggles with hallucinations of Emily, he manages to engage Pavlovich in a tense conversation.
You think I want you to have an antidote?
Pavlovich, still holding the antidote, tells Dan he will only release it if he can prove that he and Zoe are not a threat to him. The cartels, aware of Pavlovich's vulnerabilities, are pushing him to eliminate any potential threats, and Pavlovich is convinced that killing Zoe and Dan would be the best way to protect himself.
Dixons are no longer an issue.
Despite the pressure, Dan cleverly convinces Pavlovich that letting him and Zoe live is in his best interest. He explains that Zoe is in a position to either ruin Pavlovich or solve his problems depending on what she tells the police. In the back of his mind, Dan hears Emily's voice urging him to avenge her death by killing Pavlovich.
And let down his guard. And you'll kill him. And I'll know that you loved me.
Meanwhile, Zoe arrives at the local police station and asks to speak to someone in the CIA. At first, the officer doubts her claims, but Zoe's testimony about witnessing the deaths of prominent CIA agents convinces him to make the call.
Tell him that I am an eyewitness to both murders. And tell him to hurry.
Elsewhere, in Hong Kong, Harold meets with Marion. Back at the station, a man named Pete arrives, tasked with investigating Boat's murder. He's surprised when Zoe requests immunity before she shares the details, warning her about the danger she's in. Zoe remains resolute, and Pete steps away. Back to Dan, he continues to negotiate with Pavlovich, convincing him that they can both live to see another day. Dan explains that despite his desire for revenge, he made a promise to Zoe to return alive. If Pavlovich gives him the antidote and sets him free, Dan will call Zoe and have her tell the police that he is the one who killed Bot. Pavlovich is taken aback when Dan reveals the truth about Emily's origin, but Dan insists that if he helps them, he will ensure that Pavlovich's deal with the cartels remains intact. In return, Dan demands that Emily's body be brought to him for a decent burial.
Why would you tell me
What is that
I'm responsible for
The
such
place where I belong?
Meanwhile, Zoe reflects on her past marriage and the dynamics of partnerships as she waits for Dan's call. When she finally hears from him, she is relieved. But the deal quickly falls apart when Pavlovich gets another call. The principals are waiting for him, and Pavlovich decides that it's better to kill Dan and his men, as they are too much of a liability. He leaves one man behind to finish the job and heads to his meeting with the cartels. Harold quickly gets to the point, asking about Marion's relationship with Pavlovich. Marion initially tries to deflect, but Harold sees through her facade. She admits to helping Pavlovich gain control of the mine deposits. However, she reveals that Hamzad didn't want to work with Pavlovich. He preferred to work with the Americans.
You want to talk? Talk.
Pavlovich's men breach the police station. Zoe's quick thinking saves her life as she kills the assailant. And in the chaos, she runs into Julian, whom Harold sent to help her.
Yeah?
Harold Harper sent me. Make sure you're okay. Are you coming?
In Hong Kong, Harold's conversation with Marion grows more heated. Marion, after being contacted by Harold to help save Emily, realizes why Hamzad wanted to ally with the Americans. She shifts her strategy, hoping to use Harold to gain access to Emily, or to another Hamzad at the helm of the mines. He accuses her of trying to turn Emily into a Chinese asset, a betrayal of everything they stand for. Marion defends herself, claiming Pavlovich discarded her once he was done using her. Harold refuses to believe her, calling her out for trying to manipulate Emily for her own gain. As their argument continues, Pavlovich calls Marion, giving her a subtle message that he's terrified. Back at the camp, the man left behind to kill Dan has a personal vendetta. Dan killed his father years ago. The man is eager to kill Dan, but he overestimates himself. Dan kills him swiftly and frees himself. Pavlovich is facing complications with the local militia in Afghanistan, jeopardizing his plans. As Pavlovich tries to assure the principals that he's working on it, the scene shifts to Emily, who is very much alive. She's now in charge of protecting the mines, determined to stop Pavlovich's plan and secure the future of the land.
Do you have any idea who is behind this attack?
A flashback shows Emily's survival after the Russian men attacked. It turns out that despite everyone assuming she was dead, Emily was alive and offered herself as the last remaining Hamzad in exchange for the safety of her people. She negotiates with the Russians, trading information to prevent further bloodshed, including the location of the mine and key players.
I will tell you everything you want to know about this place, how it works.
After bargaining for the lives of her people, Emily begins to manipulate Pavel, the guard assigned to her. Pavel is conflicted about his role as a mercenary, torn between his loyalty to his comrades and his guilt over abandoning his family. Emily slowly gives him valuable information, carefully positioning herself to ensure her people's survival. One night, when the captain asked her to name the people who might revolt so they can be killed, Emily seizes the opportunity to escape. She incapacitates Pavel, leading her people in a revolt to reclaim the mines and ensure their survival. Meanwhile, Harold and Marion's alliance becomes more complicated. Harold successfully convinces Marion to betray Pavlovich, leveraging her desire for control over the mines. When Pavlovich calls Marion for help to regain his control over the mines, she informs Harold. Knowing that Emily is alive, Harold promises to do whatever it takes to save her, including orchestrating Pavlovich's downfall.
Help me end this. We can fight about what happens after that.
With Marion's help, they locate Pavlovich and, with the help of Julian and Zoe, set in motion Pavlovich's assassination. As Pavlovich's life comes to a violent end, Zoe rushes to find Dan.
We don't need him. I found it.
Zoe finds Dan and administers the antidote to him, saving his life. Julian, having completed the mission, takes them to one of Boat's safe houses, providing them with a secluded place to hide out. After a few days, Dan regains consciousness, and while Zoe suggests they stay a little longer, Dan remains on edge, aware that their peace won't last.
Well, Julian knows, but Morgan trusted him.
Despite the dangers that still lurk, Zoe finds solace in secretly communicating with her son, feeling happiness in their new life together.
I've always been certain there was always something else out in the dark.
You sound happy, Mom. You deserve that.
Weeks later, Dan receives a mysterious package containing a phone and a number. He and Zoe visit a diner where they finally reunite with Emily, much to Dan's relief. Emily, who he had thought was dead, promises to explain everything later but insists there's something more important to discuss: Harold's capture.
And she's trying to use him to bargain for control of the Meshbahar deposit.
Marion has taken Harold, using him as leverage to gain control of the mines. Emily, now in charge of the mines, is unhappy with Marion's manipulations, especially in using her father against her. She needs Dan to help her secure access to Luke Barlow, a man from Dan's past.
Lou Barlow had the connections to do that. It's the only way to do it. I know that you may not want to open that door again, but I need you to.
Zoe, sensing something off, demands to know who Luke is. Dan hesitates before revealing that Luke Barlow was someone from his past, a person he had hoped to leave behind. Emily insists that Luke is the only way they can get to Marion, and the conversation quickly escalates into tension. Dan proposes a different approach, but Emily takes offense, questioning his reluctance to help Harold and her. She accuses him of hiding his darkness from Zoe, or perhaps simply not wanting to bring Luke back into the picture. The argument culminates with Emily calling in her men and declaring that the debate is over. She is no longer the daughter of Dan and Balur, but Parwana Hamzad, fully willing to leverage the power of the mines to get what she wants. Whether it means using force or taking drastic measures, she is determined to take control and achieve her goals.